There comes a time in life when we truly stop breathing. Not physically, but existentially. It's when we become so adept at hiding our wounds that we forget what it's like to feel the air entering and leaving our lungs authentically. Clarice Lispector knew this better than anyone. In her every line, there's the echo of a terrifying truth. Our greatest strength lies not in appearing invulnerable, but in accepting that we are fundamentally fragile creatures navigating an ocean of uncertainty. Imagine for a moment that you're in an elevator, alone, when the doors open and someone you deeply admire enters. Instantly, something in you changes. Your shoulders straighten, your breathing becomes more measured, and you don an edited version of yourself. It's such an automatic reflex that we don't even notice. But here's the devastating paradox that Brené Brown discovered in her research. The more we try to appear strong, the more prisoners we become of our own masks. In the next few minutes, we'll uncover together why your vulnerability, that thing you spend your life trying to hide, may be exactly the key you need to experience life to its fullest. And there's something I'll only reveal at the end of this video. The exact moment when Clarice's protagonist, discovers that embracing her fragility isn't surrender, but the most radical form of rebellion against a world that teaches us to die a little each day. A glimpse of the real, where silence speaks, and the soul finds itself. Hoji, a breath of life. Why your vulnerability is your greatest strength, in Clarice Lispector's view. You've probably had that thought no one admits to having. If people really knew me, if they saw who I am inside, with all my doubts, fears, and imperfections, would they still love me? It's a thought that visits us in the wee hours of the morning, when our defenses are down, and our soul whispers its rawest truths. The point is, this thought isn't a weakness, it's the human condition in its purest form. Clarice understood this existential loneliness of those who have never been truly seen. In her characters, we find echoes of ourselves, people who built fortresses around their hearts, believing this would protect them, only to discover they have become prisoners of their own defenses. Society teaches us, from an early age, that vulnerability is synonymous with weakness. We learn to perform sanitized versions of ourselves, to hide our wounds as if they were secret crimes. But there's something we'll only discover together at the climax of this video, the precise moment when vulnerability itself becomes our greatest source of authentic power. It's a revelation that can completely change the way you relate to yourself and the world. Before we continue, tell me in the comments, how many times have you felt like you needed to be strong, when in reality, you just wanted to be understood? Write down. 1 if rarely, 2 if sometimes, or 3 if constantly. Your honesty here is already a first act of courage. Let me introduce you to 2 people. We'll call the first Marina. Marina is the kind of person everyone admires. She always has the right answer, never shows doubt, never lets on that she's struggling. On social media, her life reads like a hit catalog. When someone asks how she's doing, the answer is invariably, "Everything's great, chasing my dreams." Marina has built a version of herself so polished, so invulnerable, that even she sometimes forgets who she really is behind that performance. But here's what Marina fails to see. Her invulnerability has become a sophisticated form of living death. She's so busy maintaining her image of fortitude that she never allows anyone to truly see her, know her, love her for who she truly is. Jung would call this persona inflation, when we mistake our social mask for our true selves. Now, imagine a completely different character, Maccabea, from Clarice Lispector's The Hour of the Star. Maccabea didn't know how to protect herself. She was transparent in her vulnerability, raw in her humanity. And paradoxically, it's precisely this transparency that makes her unforgettable, that touches us so deeply decades after she was created. She didn't try to be strong, she was simply genuine. Here's a 30-second reflection for you. Close your eyes for a moment and think about the person who most significantly touched your life. Was this person someone who never showed fragility? Or was it someone who somehow let you see their true humanity? The answer that emerges spontaneously already tells us something profound about the true power of vulnerability. So let's understand the three fundamental pillars of what it truly means to embrace your vulnerability as a strength, not a weakness. And if what I've shared so far resonates with you, subscribe to the channel, because now comes the part that almost no one tells you, the part that can completely transform your relationship with yourself. The first pillar is what I call the courage to be imperfect. Sartre told us that we are condemned to be free, but there is a deeper layer to this condemnation. We are condemned to be imperfect, and this requires a courage few possess. Vulnerability is not a strategic choice. It is the recognition of our fundamental human condition. When Clarice wrote about the moment of being, she spoke of that instant when we stop fighting against our own humanity. It takes courage to admit that we don't have all the answers, that we carry wounds, that sometimes we feel lost. This admission isn't weakness. It's the only honest way to exist. Think about the people you admire most in history. Were they those who never made a mistake, never doubted? Or were they those who, in their imperfect humanity, showed us something true about what it means to be human? The second pillar is shadow integration. Jung teaches us that what we hide most from ourselves contains exactly what we need most to become whole. Our shadow isn't just the bad parts of us. It's everything we deem unacceptable. Our sadness, our fears, our need for love. Clarice had an intimate relationship with her own shadow. She wasn't trying to be a strong writer. She was a true writer. And truth always includes fragility. Here's a 1-minute practical application. Think of a characteristic of yours that you most try to hide from others. It could be your excessive sensitivity, your need for approval, or your fear of not being enough. Now, instead of seeing this as a weakness, ask yourself, how can this part of me, when accepted and integrated, become a source of understanding, empathy, and authentic connection with others? The answer that emerges is the beginning of transforming your shadow into a strength. But there's a third, even deeper pillar, and therein lies a secret I'll only reveal when we reach the final part of our meeting. It's about the exact moment your vulnerability stops being a burden and becomes your greatest form of rebellion against a world that teaches us to die emotionally to appear acceptable. There's a Zen story that always reminds me of Clarice Lispector's visceral wisdom. A young monk asks his master, "How can I become invulnerable to suffering?" The master silently picks up a precious ceramic bowl and hands it to the young man. "Is this bowl valuable because it is sturdy?" he asks. The young man replies, "No, master, it is valuable because it is beautiful and unique." The master then drops the bowl. It shatters into 1,000 pieces. "What now?" the master asks. The young man, confused, replies, "Now it's useless." The master smiles. "Ah, but now it can nourish the earth. It can be rebuilt with gold in its cracks, as the Japanese do with kintsugi. Its breakage didn't destroy it. It revealed new possibilities of beauty." If you've made it this far into our conversation, it says something profound about who you are. You're part of that select group of people who don't seek easy answers, but are willing to delve into the real complexity of existence. Most stop in the first few minutes, looking for quick solutions. You chose to stay. That in itself is an act of courage. Alan Watts teaches us that life is like a river. The more we try to control it, the more it slips through our fingers. Vulnerability is, essentially, the practice of letting go of trying to control how others see us. It's letting our truth flow, even when that truth isn't convenient, pretty, or palatable. This is what Clarice did with every line. She surrendered herself to the experience of being human, unedited, unfiltered. When we stop trying to control our image, we discover a freedom that is both terrifying and liberating. It's the freedom to simply exist, to breathe our own truth, to allow others to see not only our successes, but also our struggles, our questions, our raw, real humanity. And there's something even deeper waiting for us. Something about how this choice to be vulnerable actually becomes the most radical way to transform not only our own experience, but to touch the lives of others in a way no mask of invulnerability ever could. Now we come to the point I promised at the beginning, the revelation of how your vulnerability transforms into revolutionary rebellion. Camus spoke of the revolt against the absurd, but there is a more subtle and perhaps more revolutionary revolt, the revolt against the obligation to be perfect, strong, invulnerable. When we choose to be vulnerable in a world that demands invulnerability, we are making a profoundly subversive political statement. We are saying, I refuse to live an edited life. I refuse to die of emotional thirst to appear strong. Clarice was a silent revolutionary. Every character she portrayed that allowed herself to feel deeply was an act of rebellion against the superficiality of the world. Here's the second practical application, and it could change everything. Think of a situation in your life where you're performing strength, where you're expending emotional energy maintaining an image that everything is fine when in fact you're struggling. It could be at work, in a relationship, or even within yourself. Now imagine that instead of spending that energy maintaining the mask, you could direct it towards something genuine, to create, to connect, to grow. The difference is revolutionary. Brené Brown discovered something extraordinary in her research. The people who live most fully are not those who avoid vulnerability, but those who have developed the courage to be vulnerable consciously and deliberately. They understood that authentic connection with others and with ourselves only happens when we stop trying to be perfect and start being real. Which of these revelations has touched you most so far? And how do you plan to apply them to your life? Share in the comments not only what you thought, but also how you intend to be a little more courageously vulnerable from now on. Your honesty here may inspire someone reading who needed just that permission to be more authentic. And if you feel like these words came into your life at just the right time, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Because we're just beginning this journey of discovering the strength that resides within our own humanity. Now we arrive at the moment I promised from the beginning, GH's epiphany and her revelation of the transformative power of vulnerability. In Clarice Lispector's The Passion According to GH, there's a scene that forever changed my understanding of strength and fragility. GH, a woman living a controlled and socially acceptable life, opens her maid's closet and comes across a cockroach. In this seemingly trivial encounter, she experiences a profound existential crisis. But here lies the revolutionary moment. Instead of running away from the disgust, the fear, the disturbance she feels, GH allows herself to fully experience these feelings. She doesn't try to be strong, doesn't try to rationalize or control the experience. And it is precisely in this moment of absolute vulnerability, when she stops fighting her own humanity, that her greatest transformation occurs. The cockroach wasn't just a cockroach. It was the mirror of everything GH tried to hide from herself, the primal, the uncontrollable, the real. And by embracing this reality, rather than rejecting it, she discovered a way of existing that was infinitely more authentic and powerful than any mask she had ever worn. The synthesis of all this reveals three fundamental truths. First, our strength comes not from hiding our humanity, but from fully honoring it. Second, when we stop wasting energy maintaining masks, we free that same energy to create love and live authentically. And third, conscious vulnerability doesn't make us weak. It makes us deeply, revolutionarily human. There's a pause I need to make here, because what happens when we truly integrate this understanding is nothing less than a complete transformation of how we experience life, relationships, and our very existence. I want to leave you with a truth that most people will never discover. Life in its fullness reveals itself only to those who have the courage to breathe their own truth. Clarice knew this. Every authentic breath is an act of rebellion against a world that teaches us to hold our emotional breath. Breathing, then, becomes our most perfect metaphor for vulnerability. Just as we can't pretend to breathe for long, we can't pretend to live authentically if we're always hiding who we really are. And herein lies the ultimate paradox. When we stop trying to control how we're seen and simply start being, we discover that we become exactly the kind of person we'd like to know. Most people will never apply this, will never have the courage to let down their defenses and allow their genuine humanity to shine through. They will continue to waste precious energy maintaining masks that leave them exhausted and empty. But you can be the exception. You can choose the braver path, the path of being deeply, vulnerably, and authentically yourself. The first step is simple, yet revolutionary. Identify an area of your life where you're exerting strength and gently allow yourself to be a little more real. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It could mean admitting you're not okay when someone asks. It could mean sharing a doubt instead of feigning certainty. It could simply mean stopping editing your feelings to fit what you think others expect. If this video touched you, if you felt these words came at the right time in your journey, subscribe to the channel and share with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to be human. Hit the bell, because our next conversation will be about something even deeper. How the silence you so fear can actually be the space where your soul finally finds its own voice. And I leave you with this final thought. When you allow your vulnerability to be seen, you not only free yourself, you give others permission to breathe their own truth too. And perhaps in this collective, courageous breath, we can create a world that's a little more real, a little more human, a little more like what our hearts truly yearn for.